Hello everyone! Today we will look at the major update of the UnrealExporter add-on, focused on collision, socket and some additional experimental features. The UnrealExporter add-on is an add-on made to streamline your pipeline between Blender and Unreal or whatever engine. It helps you batch export mesh at the origin of the world to make sure the pivot stay where you wanted them to be. The video will be split into 3 different parts: the collision, socket and experimental features one, but most of the video will be focused on the collision one, as this is the main new feature of the add-on. To give you an overview of this new feature, we'll see the collision primitive and how we can use simple primitive to build up our complex collision, in addition to smart way to generate UCX between KDOP or simplification generation. There is also now some socket integration support, where you can easily place, visualize and export socket position into the engine. And to finish, I've also added some experimental features such as possibility to export rigged asset or animation with already set up preset. Why should we care about generating proper collision? Most of the time, the auto-generated collisions are inaccurate, especially on concave shape, and complex as simple as a collision preset is quite heavy for the CPU. Lastly, tweaking all those directly within the engine might be a bit tedious. That's the main reason for this add-on, to being able to quickly generate proper collision adapted to your design, and that you can easily tweak or re-import with one button. Okay, before diving further, let's do some quick assumption about this generator. So every collision you've generated here are linked to the UnrealExporter. So for example, if I want to then export, and I do have collision export enabled, so let's export our cobaye of the day Suzanne, up, export selected object, and then I go to Unreal, up, and I want to import Suzanne, up, there we go. You don't have to do anything and everything will be imported properly. So if I go here into simple collision, we can see that my simple collision are here based on what I've set up. In addition to that, I want to do a quick shout out to the visibility mode. So each time you do have collision in your scene, you have the possibility to display it from different manner. Here right now what we can see is that we have color wireframe and the collision mesh is selectable. For example, we can just get the wireframe or the source object or just a color, and we can make sure that it's not selectable anymore. So if we want to walk, we will not be bothered by the collision interference. In addition to that, you have the overall visibility tool for all the collision to be hide or to be shown. Note that for all the other parameters for later on, we have the possibility to work for the field of visibility, such as the hide and show all here. So for example, I can just hide or show a hierarchy or for all mesh. And for the generation of collision, we can say that we want to generate one for all the selection or one by mesh in the selection. Let's do a quick and simple example up. If, for example, I do have 3 Suzanne, here we go. And so right now I, for example, create a collision. It creates a collision for the 3 Suzanne, or I can say up, create a collision per Suzanne. That's the main difference. Up. And now that we are here, let's reduce the generation. I can now make sure up that I can select the collision, and I can now hide all the collision, or just make sure that I want to hide the collision in the current hierarchy as you need. Now that we've known the basic of that tool, let's dive into the simple collision operator. So for the simple collision operator, This is really some simple primitives that are UBX for box collision, USP for sphere collision, and UCP for capsule collision that are generated and that you can transform afterwards, so move, rotate, scale, to match your needs. Note that those few are really cheaper to compute in engine afterward, so it's a great practice to use them whenever you need. And note also that multiple simple collision are most of the time cheaper than one heavy complex collision, UCX, custom collision. So let's dive into the operator. The first one is add cube up, renewable. That you can add as many cubes as you want and make sure that it covers the part you want. You can rotate, scale them. Non-uniform scale work perfectly up. So let's do something like that. There you go. We do have the sphere collision. This sphere collision exactly as the same as a cube, but base is a sphere. Nothing super fancy to talk about right now. And then we have the capsule collision. The capsule collision is basically a cylinder up that have on both of its hemisphere an half sphere. So note that for all of those primitives, you can't go in edit mode and then move it around, because this is not how it's computed afterward in engine, and so you will truncate your view in Blender compared to the integration in engine. So the real problem appears with the capsule collision. For instance, you want to rescale it and want to having something with more 8, but as you can see, the whole sphere are broken. That's why I've integrated those parameters here. Note that at the generation, you can tweak whatever is the radius you want or whatever is the 8. And even more, even after you placed it with your local transform, you can still regenerate it. So for example, I'm happy with that, but I would love to have, I don't know, a bit more 8. So I can just increase the 8 up, it regenerate, and it's perfect. Up. Note that there is no cap here, so I could go on crazy value if needed. But up, let's go. And we can do the same with the radius. Yay! So let's try that out. Export selected object. I can go back to my little Suzanne here. Re-import the mesh. And as we can see, we have all the collision properly set up. We have our capsule, our box here, and our sphere here. Yeah, that's perfect. Now let's clean all that mess up. And let's see about the custom collision. Now, on certain case, it's complicated with just primitive to fit the shape you have with your collision. So you might want to create custom UCX that will best fit your current meshes. So first thing first, maybe you already have created your own custom collision. So for instance, let's do something like that, and let's say I'm happy with it, and I want it to be the collision of my Suzanne. So what I could do, I added a little operator here that is convert to UCX, that will take whatever volume you've created, check if you have a proper parent, and if yes, it will transform to a collision to that parent. So first thing to do here is to make sure that my cube here, it's parented to Suzanne. So let's parent it. And now that is good, I can just convert to UCX up. And as you can see, the display updates accordingly to my collision display setup. And we have now all little setups that work well. Okay, so that's just for converting one custom meshes to your UCX. But most of the time you want to... Let's now take a look at the generate convex collision to selected. So what it does is basically taking into account all the volume and simplify it by all external points based on the target face count value that we've input. Note that this is approximately what it will aim for. It might be a bit above or a bit under depending of your mesh. So let's take a look. Up. We have a quite nice generated collision quite quickly, and that fit nice. As we can see, for example, if I change here the target face collision, up, we can have something with a bit more density. If that needed on that mesh, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that no. Or something more rough. We can also, due to the fact that it's using some embed generator from Blender, we can also make sure that it doesn't bake those. So for example, I untick bake here, and I can generate the collision. And right now I do have my collision that is here, and I have the decimate that is still procedural, so I can adjust it afterward if needed. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's take a look in Engine as always. Up, export selected. Re-import. And the collision is well imported. Now let's see for the KDOP generation. So basically, it makes some planes around your mesh and try to push it till it touches your mesh, and then it's kind of a plane of the final mesh. So for example, let's go off a basic one, generate a KDOP. We can see that there is a plane here that we are pushed until it touch and then stop. Here the same, on top the same, exactly. That is a more optimized way to create a custom convex collision, especially as with flattened collision surface, this is cheaper to compute. And so for example, for mesh such as barrel, for example, we can make sure that the barrel, we want something that is really accurate on all the X and Y axis, but that will be super flat on the Z axis, as we can step on and we don't want super accuracy on the Z collision. So we can do a simplification on the Z axis. And if I generate the KDOP, we can see that we have a proper collision on the XY, but on the Z is 100% flat. And that's cheaper to compute afterward ray trace in physics in Engine. So that's another way to generate custom collision. And you can have pretty nice results, but sometimes, especially with high value, it might be more interesting to do even multiple simpler one, or to using the generate convex hull, the default one, and not the KDOP one. Note that on the K-DOP option, you can do the evaluation of the mesh, as I told you that this is based on planes that are pushed till they touch your mesh. We can make sure that this is on wall space or local space. So for example, if I rotate this little guy here and I go back to the simplify on the Z axis here, you can see it's still simplified on the wall Z axis, but we can make sure it's simplified on the object Z axis if needed. And now let's see if it's imported properly. So let's do, up. Let's go back into world. Something like that is perfect. I want to disable selectable, up, export selected. And let's take a look here, import. And everything went well. Before moving to the socket part, I want to do a quick reminder. Let's remind ourselves about that tool that is here also to help us export hierarchy based on origin. So for instance, let's say that you have a complex mesh here. So let's say that Suzanne is a unicorn. That's nice. Here, there you go. And that unicorn, everything is parented to Suzanne. We can do the collision not only on Suzanne itself, but also on the sub-meshes. So for instance here, if I add a cube and I rotate it and up, there we go, something as that. And for instance here, I do a KDOP collision. I can still afterward export the whole hierarchy go back to Unreal, re-import, and as you can see, I do have everything centered in the center of the world, as this is the purpose of the original add-on, but also with proper collision setup. And that is really, really helpful, trust me. Now it's time to take a look at sockets. What are sockets? Basically, sockets are pointy space tied to your mesh that are helpful because you can retrieve them in engine or hooked stuff directly on it. For instance, you have a chandelier and you want a candle on it. You can set up wherever you want a candle on it, and then you can just attach your static mesh to the socket. So for instance, here I can say that this is Suzanne the unicorn, and I can define a point where I want the horn to be attached. So let's do that. First, we open the socket option. We'll see that here we will have visibility options that we can use later on. And we also have the possibility to add a socket and a toggle to make sure that do we want to add the socket on the mesh itself or at the position of the 3D cursor. For now on, let's just try as that. So as you can see now, I do have an empty that is the socket for Suzanne. Up. So here I can put it wherever I need. There you go. And if I export Suzanne, so this is not SM Suzanne now, this is just Suzanne. I should have renamed it Suzanne the Unicorn. I can import Suzanne, import. And as we can see here, we do have this socket already set up. And on the socket, if needed, I could preview a static mesh. Let's do an axis guide up, and we do have our unicorn that is set up. Note that on the socket, it remembers all the transform information, such as position, rotation, and scale. So you can play with it, so the attached mesh, for example, is different, look different in engine. Okay, that's great. Let's create some other. This one, to ease work, let's create it at cursor. So for example, one here at socket, one here at socket, and re-export it. Let's get back to Unreal, re-import here, and as we can see, everything went super smoothly. I can still display whatever I need. Yeah, maybe that's too big. The axis guide is really nice. Up. And if needed, I can still edit them in engine directly. But this tool is here as on my day-to-day work, I found myself being like, oh, I want to set up that directly in engine. That's why this tool is here, and this is not a wall panel as based on the collision setup. This is just inheriting some setup I've already written down. Now let's take a quick look about the experimental feature. I will not spend that much time on it because those are really experimental, are here because I use it day to day, but there might be some fine-tuning to have or not adapted to every setup. That's why I prefer to keep them separate from the rest. Not that they are all tested on my side and work properly for my own use, so they might fit your needs too. To enable them, go into Advanced option and click Enable Experimental feature. We do have now the Export Rigged Asset or animation here, and some additional parameter here. Up. So, what we have here is like, now we do have the possibility to change in which kind of wall space we want to export it, into the Blender space and Unreal space. Note that at the import into the engine, Unreal do automatically the conversion, but you need to keep the same setting for the same rig and animation and stuff. If you change in between your process or you re-export with a different setting, this might mess up a bit your setup. That's why make sure to set up whatever you need and to keep track of it for every animation or rigged asset you will use later on. So you do have those choice of space. You also have the option to face Y forward to make sure the export is kind of the same orientation as the default Blender view space. You also have the option to set up the rigged asset name and to export only the rig. So if you have multiple animation and you just want the rigged asset, you can just export a rig. And afterward, you can press export rig asset in animation and everything will follow up. Those are some tools that I use day to day, but don't feel in obligation to use them if you would already have a nice process for animation asset. I hope you guys like this update and this will be useful for you. Note that this update is already available on Gumroad, GitHub and everywhere else for free. I also hope you guys like my new little video editing skills and can't wait to show you that on a real art, environment art tutorial that is coming really soon, that I hope you guys will like. So see you soon and take care.